I guess we're just gonna get started, you and I, and then hopefully Michael will join us. Um, okay, so thank you everyone for joining us again for another Therapy Thursday. Um, if you're new to the platform, Urban Health Media Project is an organization who trains young journalists to report on different health issues, and including mental health issues. And for this Therapy Thursday, we're going to be talking about incarceration and mental health, which is a very complex problem. And we have some amazing guests with us, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce them for you. First, we have William Hassan, who is located in Cleveland, Ohio. He is a licensed social worker working as a behavioral health counselor. He previously worked with the juvenile population for 6 years, and one of his specialties is a substance abuse counselor. And then we have Michael Lacey, who was formerly imprisoned. He has used TikTok, where he has over 800,000 followers, as a platform to share his experience and to advocate for prisoners' rights. So thank you so much for joining us today and for being part of this conversation, for bringing awareness to this very important problem, and just hoping to shed some light on these issues. So we also have a third guest, which I think she was having some connection problems, but if she's able to join us, I will introduce her whenever she joins us. But for now, we're going to get started. So thank you again, and we're going to get started with the first question. Let's start with this simple, I guess, quote unquote, simple question. Why do you think the United States number of incarcerated people is exponentially higher than any other country in the world? And just I'm going to throw a quick fact in there. The U.S. makes up almost 5% of the entire world population, yet we make up 20% of people in prison. So pretty startling fact. So we can begin with you, Michael. Why do you think it's so much more higher than any other country?
I think it's a few factors. One of them is culture, and that's one of the lesser ones. But I think you have to take the larger kind of cultural ideal of America into account. Like when you look at, how rampant we are when it comes to shootings and violence and stuff like that, that's kind of like a cultural thing. But I think the most important part is it's the economics behind it all. Because see, unlike in other countries, in the United States, building prisons, building jails, the whole prison industrial complex, which I know some people hear that and it's like, it kind of sounds kind of conspiratorial, but it's a real thing. And it is big business. There are a lot of people that are making tons of money off of that, the whole kind of the system in its totality. So I think that the money behind it. And then I also think that when it comes to politics, because see, when you look at the politics in America, when you start talking about, people that have felony backgrounds, locked up, whatever it may be, and when you look at from state to state, their voting rights varies. There's certain things in Mississippi, if you get locked up for, you can never vote again, and it varies from state to state, which is odd. But I think that when you look at that's why politicians don't lobby for prison reform and stuff like that, because there's no political capital behind it. So, and then when you take the politics, you take the culture, you take the money, and then you take into account the psychological collective, like in a lot of Americans, where it's like, they don't see nothing wrong, but it's like they done bad, put them in jail. And I think you take all those factors, and that's when you start talking about why America is the only country that looks like this on the planet when it comes to incarceration and locking people up.
I agree. Yeah. So you would say that the money behind it is one of the motivating factors in keeping it the way that it is, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay. So thankfully our third guest was able to join us. So I'm going to introduce Shawana Vong. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name. So Shawana was also formerly in prison. She went through and witnessed very traumatic experiences, which encouraged her to start the organization Silent Cry Inc., which she is using to fight for reform in the prison system. She's also trying to get the bill Post-Traumatic Prison Disorder Act, which is demanding to implement better mental health care to inmates and post-release. So thank you for joining us, Shawana. And we were just getting started with the first question, which is, why do you think the U.S. number of incarcerated people is exponentially higher than any other country? So I'm gonna let William answer, and then you can answer the question as well. So William,
I would like to piggyback on what my partner said about the politics. Another thing that I believe about America is its ideal of what it is never really matches with the reality of what it is. And so, lots of times we like to throw Band-Aids at things. So, for example, if a person has a problem, you give them a medication. You don't see very many commercials about talking, very many commercials about therapy. Only time you ever really hear about therapy is like in the real world. So America's solution to problems, and it's like you said, it's cheaper, quicker. If you think about it, if you want a whole bunch of people to not use drugs, instead of making a treatment program, just put a jail there. And probably less people are going to use drugs. You want to try to control your society, put a jail there instead of trying to talk to them, instead of trying to help them. And even though all of us could probably show you that treatment would save you money, would actually save you money, the statistics and the research shows you less going back to jail. You help people get housing, you help people this and that. They'd much rather the money thing, just put a building somewhere. You throw a bunch of people in a building. I don't have to talk to them. I don't have to spend any money on them. If they come back out and they mess up, I just throw them back again. I don't give them a house. And if they try to get a house, I just throw them back again. And then I throw the book at them. Now, obviously, there are extremes with certain people. But what we're talking about is overall, I mean, I believe that's why other countries aren't as I don't think they see the money potential behind just locking everybody up. And then you add in all of we can talk all day about all of the racial, social, political issues that go on in the United States of America with its founding. I think this stuff goes pretty much all the way back to the beginning. So, I think those are the reasons. So I think it's kind of all related.
definitely. Thank you for your input, and unfortunately, it's very deeply rooted. Shawana, why do you think that our numbers are so much higher than any other country in the world?
Our numbers are so much higher than any other country in the world because I do have to echo the sentiments that he just said. Listen, we're rooted in the fabric of America, in white supremacy and racism and capitalism. And without slavery, there is no America. And that's the bottom line. There is no America if there is no slavery. And if there's no slavery, there's no capitalism. So the bottom line is, I say it every day. Unfortunately, we are the blood diamond, and we are the mineral, and we are the uranium. And we're sitting inside of plantations because the value of minorities is high. And so is industrial free labor. And until we can conquer that capitalist greed complex, it's hard to tackle mass incarceration. He's right, throw a building somewhere. But it no longer can we keep creating prison instead of treating humans. Doesn't work.
Great point.
Thank you for your input as well. we're gonna jump into the next question, which it relates to the first one, but I'll get to the question. 2 million people with a mental illness are incarcerated every year for low-level nonviolent offenses. How do you think this happens in, again, such big numbers? And we can get started with you, Michael.
Just like a lot of other things, and like the social ills in America, it's multifaceted. Because I think one of them is, and it's like what was spoke about earlier, is there's no real serious incentive in America when it comes to teaching more about mental health and putting things and putting real things in line that can catch things early and that takes that issue kind of serious. Like I was reading an article the other day, and it was just kind of mind blowing that this even had to be said in an article, is that maybe the government needs to spend more funding when it comes to mental illness treatment in lower economic environments. You know, you don't see things like that. And it's like if things like that start on the ground floor, then as a person is kind of, you know, growing up or getting older, when they start encountering certain situations where they may get in trouble with the law, there's this body of work that puts into context who that person is. So I think that's one of the things. Is just like, it's not, now people are beginning to talk more about mental health and things like that. But like when I went to prison in 1997, people, it's like this is a fairly new conversation. So with that being said, there's nothing real there's no real funds being spent to create institutions that will help. And then this one, and this goes to the topic a little earlier when we was talking about capitalism. And see, one of the things when I get to prison, one of the first things I noticed when I get there, and I'm 22 years old and I just walked in there and I got 60 years and it's like this big ass place. And what I noticed is a vast majority of people that are locked up in the United States come from lower economic backgrounds. Yeah, you have every now and then you have the person who come for money, but that's not the norm. Those are the exceptions. And when you take that into account, a lot of people don't have the money to even get they don't have the money to spend to get a fair trial. So I think when you look at this kind of lack of concern overall, when it comes to people from lower economic environments across racial lines, it's, that's another reason why you see the prison population so large. But then that concept also affects the mental health aspect of it. And then when you get to prison, and this is mind blowing to me. Now, mind you, this is a place where people are from all different walks of life, and a lot of people have come out of extremely traumatic backgrounds. But there is not even a serious mental health mechanism inside. It's not really, it's just like this thing that's on paper. They can say they got a few psych doctors. Mind you, it may be 1,500 inmates in one prison, and it's like 6 psych doctors. So it's not taken serious there. And then those same people go home. So a lot of them get worse. Then they go home, and then you hear people talking about the recidivism rate. And a lot of people have not been getting the appropriate help from the beginning. And they go the rest of the journey without getting the proper, the proper treatment and the proper things that are needed that would assist in helping them walk a better life. So I think it's kind of those factors.
Very many factors. I totally agree with you. And it's actually been proven that there are multiple factors that can lead to that, unfortunately. William, would you have anything to add to that?
Most of the time just dealing, because I deal with drugs and I deal with mental health. If you also, like I said, piggybacking on my colleague, if you also think about how the criminal justice system is set up, first of all, where do they put a jail? They put a jail in a city. Like, for example, in Cleveland now, we got a county jail that's right in the middle of downtown. and a lot of the cities in Cleveland has shut down their suburban jails. So now everybody comes down to that county jail. So whether it's a DUI, little traffic, or whatever, number one. Number two, the way that they describe crimes, an urban population would more fit that definition of that crime. So what that would do, like for example, a person out in the suburbs may, I'm just using an example, may break into your house, I'm going to use break into her house and rifle through her drawer and then walk out. Because that looks so weird, they may want to give him treatment. Somebody in an urban area breaks into a house and actually assaults this lady. Now, that don't mean the first guy's not going to assault her. But see, you can put certain definitions around certain crimes. Number one. Number two, like he was saying about mental health, it's all about law and order. All about law and order. What do I want to know about schizophrenia? What do I want to know about anger, aggression? What do I want to know about your mama dying? What do I want to know about a friend getting shot in front of your face? That whole thing and the whole thing with that George Floyd stuff and all the people that got killed, some of those people were pulled over for basically nothing. So I think some of it's done. What's the word I'm going to use for? What's the word? Urban control. Pulling you over because you don't have a whistle on your bike, choking a man to death because he's selling loose cigarettes. Low-level things that you would just probably would probably be a ticket or just a warning. But I think it's tied into the racial thing. When Trump came along, I think this whole racial thing jumped. Well, actually, it started with Obama. And this whole racial thing got up, and I think the society said, okay, we got to get them back in line. So they were taking real low-level stuff. Like I said, stuff, I live in the city of Cleveland. Sometimes police officers will be like, man, whatever, go on. I got other things to do. And so these low-level offenses, I think, to me, become part of a way we need to control this society again. Definitely. These people have gotten out of hand. They haven't gotten out of hand. They have problems. But now I can use these mental health problems they have and put these mental health problems means you're out of hand. You know what? You got a problem. Go take a pill. Go sit down. Go shut up. Yeah. I have a line this high. Now I set it this low. You see what I'm saying? I set it this low. So you might be just upset. Maybe you punch a wall. Maybe you crack a window. Boom. And then at our place, they keep them locked up. They don't see a judge for weeks, sitting there for a probation. Somebody's sitting there waiting for an ankle monitor for basically nothing, and they're just sitting in the county jail. Never been in the county jail before. So what happens? They freak out in the county jail. They freak out in the county jail. Now you're putting them in a restraint chair. Now this low-level thing, maybe a guy got a DUI, never been in the county jail before. Now this guy's got other charges because he's freaking out. When in the past, that could have just been something. You let them go home, you write a ticket. Heck, sometimes you might have even let them go with the warning. I see it as, unfortunately, urban control. I think it's the way. So we don't get a lot of suburban people in that jail. We really don't, unless sometimes because they shut down a lot of the city jails, but they didn't shut down a lot of the suburban jails. Does that make sense? So if you live in the suburbs, you can be locked up in the suburban jail. You live in the city of Cleveland and surrounding areas, they are sending you downtown to the county jail. Now, our county jail looks the same as it did in 1993. It don't look no different. So you can imagine you're wide-eyed. I saw this young guy the other day. I was going to see him. He looked terrified. Little bitty guy. Now, thankfully, he got out. But just imagine if they just let him sit there for low-level stuff. I think it's an attempt for urban control.
Definitely.
I really do.
SHAWANA.
Yeah, so you just take low-level offenses.
Yeah, thank you.
And you just run with it.
Yeah,
so
that was very, very, I hadn't seen it that way, but it's very informative. Thank you for that, William. SHAWANA, you are actually in New York City, right? So would you have anything to add?
Ask the question.
Sure. 2 million people with a mental illness are incarcerated every year for low-level, non-violent offenses. How do you think this happens?
This happens because we do not start treatment in our communities. I believe that treatment does not start when you're incarcerated. First of all, I'm an African American woman who's always lived in African American neighborhoods. Now, I have a different theory. Some of it is we live in a military style policy as African Americans. Don't ask, don't tell. What goes on in this house stays in this house. We create generations of trauma. We don't create generations of healing.
Right.
At a place where if it hurts, say ouch, and whoever did it, tell. Because our own communities are not being treated because of stereotypes and generations before that just said praying was enough. It's not. And we are being affected by, you listen, our grandmothers and grandfathers did not help us. And sometimes I like the onus to be on the person. Now, some of it is us. Some of it is just historical trauma. You know, we have historical trauma. We have collective trauma. And the reality is, guess what? The first line of defense to help us is us. And so I started in my house. I go to therapy. I won't have any children of mine go to prison. The cycle stops here. And so we have a lot of people who are mentally ill going to prison because we have schools that give our children Ritalin and label them from the beginning. And we don't have parents that have the wherewithal to fight back. And these are community conversations that have to happen. We will not give our children medicine. Our children do not start out at 5 with OCD and ADHD. No. We have to fight back and use the words no. And so, you know, prison is overcrowded because we have ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. Nobody got to prison without adverse childhood experiences, which turned into adult traumas, and we don't get treated. And this is exactly the reason I have legislation. This is exactly why I wrote legislation. And though it took prison trauma to exacerbate my ACEs, nobody got to prison one morning by their crime. You were silently crying the entire time until you got there. And it's just, we live in a place where it's shut up, suck it up. Black men don't cry. Black men be tough. Little girls are warriors. That's bullshit. We need help. It's okay to cry. It's okay to say, I need help. And we have to change the narratives. That's why prison is overcrowded with mental health disorders.
Yeah. And
That was very powerful. Thank you for that.
to add to that too, it's one thing, and it's just, this is just the reality, because sometimes I don't like to, because when you live within a country, a capitalist country, that's the mode of production, that's the economic system. So, a lot of things track back to economics. I hate to be like, I always like, because a lot of things kind of start with economics. It's, and it's kind of like sometimes people become suspicious of, kind of like what you're working out of politically. But also, when you look at this, when you look at the economics of mental health, is therapy and things like that have been these things that were traditionally luxuries for people that could afford them.
Mm-hmm.
They were like this thing that was like, oh, the rich people did that. A lot of it is because, like she was just saying, some of it like within like the cultural elements within the Black community, we know how that is. And then, some of it is, people too busy trying to pay the bills and they ain't got no extra money to be throwing around. And then, so it's like the money thing also kind of pops up when you have people, like I say, a lot of people that you say like people that are locked up for minor things. I mean, a lot of them, if they had money behind them going through the system wouldn't have looked at the same. That's just the reality of it.
Unfortunately, it's very unfair. Thank you for your input, everyone. And I'm going to move on to a question that relates to what we were just talking about, which is, okay, what are other options here to prevent people suffering from mental illnesses from going to jail? so we kind of discussed starting within the communities early. Do you think that programs such as like outreach programs, providing free services, such as free screening and therapy in low-income communities, would make a big difference? I know it's a very multi-layer problem, and it needs to be faced in that sense, in that approach. But what are your thoughts on that, Shawana? We can begin with you this time.
I'm actually working right now with my new councilwoman, Christy Jordan, and I live in public housing. And public housing is a project that is imploding from the inside. So I'm currently working with her to create a mental health program that starts in public housing. And so it looks like peer specialists. It looks like mental health workers. And the problem is there's a shortage of African American minority, period minority, trauma-informed therapists. I did not say a textbook therapist. We need trauma-informed therapists in trauma battlefield neighborhoods. And so it's hard to talk to people when they don't look like you. It's hard to talk to people when they haven't been through anything. So I've been actually on a journey to find trauma-informed therapists and see what that looks like. So I'm looking for volunteers. I'm looking for money to see how we can pay people. And I also know that therapy looks different for each individual who needs it. And so even in my legislation and even in my programming, I'm asking for individualized therapy programs. Everybody doesn't want to talk. Some people want to do art. I really want alternatives to medication. Because my hashtag is birthing pain is like birthing a baby with no anesthetic. It hurts. And so drugs do not heal communities. I don't want any more drugs. I want everybody to get sober and hurt until you heal. And that's what that looks like. It looks like taking our 5-year-old children and figuring out what that is for them. If they have to write it, if they need therapy animals. We're giving people in prison are training dogs for police. Well, how about we start training emotional support dogs for people? And so I'm ready to try the gamut of therapies because no one solution is going to work. So how about we just go outside the box and outside of what we're used to and try it on until something works on each individual. So that's where we're at. I actually
Thank
just
you for that. That's amazing that you're starting all these programs. I really admire that. And I actually live in New York and I'm from the Bronx, so I see exactly what you're talking about, and I desperately feel like we need it as well. So thank you so much for that. I'm sure it's going to make a big difference for so many people's lives. William, what would you say are some things that we can do in our communities?
I loved everything she said. Looking at it from a therapist point of view, because lots of times I walk into a place, I'm probably the only Black person they ever saw. And I'm not putting down other cultures, but when you have some young 20-year-old new student, she's blonde haired and she hasn't worked in the community. And then I come along and they say, I want to talk to you. And they try to be nice. Like they don't want to say, they don't want the white, they don't want to say it, but in 2 seconds. But one thing I want to say to go along with what she was saying about the programs is, but you also have to have a program for the therapist, because a lot of the therapists need to start understanding the communities that they're serving. Like they'll take a person, we'll get the schooling, we'll get the training. I'm not saying that we're not trained, but they don't train you, not only just from the trauma informed, which is very important, but they'll train you in the subtleties of dealing with certain communities. I remember one time I was going into one of the housing projects, and there was this guy from out of town, and he was like, man, you sure you want to go there by yourself? I like, man, I'm cool. So I go up in the housing project, and it's like a room full of people, and I'm talking to the lady, and her babies are crawling all over the place. So I just put one on my lap, and I just do my thing.
Easy.
I tell people, they're like, what? Because I'm sort of used to just doing what you need to do. A lot of the therapists aren't trained that way. They go to school, they come out, they may work even in an urban community center, but in order to do what she's, SHAWANA, that's it?
Yes.
Yeah. In order to do what she wants them to do, they have to also have that additional training to sort of understand just the people they're going to work with. Yeah, you can work on the top level with trauma, but like you said, you got to understand you're dealing with trauma in this particular community. Like that person's trauma may be like war, Vietnam. This person's trauma may be seeing people shot right in front of them. This person's trauma may be being left in a house cold and their mother was somewhere using drugs. This person, and we're not really sometimes trained. And then they throw you in and you do it for enough years, you have to figure it out. But it would probably help her program if, in addition to the training that we get as therapists, we also get that type of training. And so then these outreach programs will be more effective. You won't have people like 3 weeks in, a month in, deciding they want to get another job.
Yeah.
Because this stuff kind of terrifies them. Like when I went into the county jail, I just started working in the county jail like 6 weeks ago. And my supervisors, they'll walk in like, you okay? You okay? I'm like, man, I'm fine. You sure you're okay? I said, I'm fine. I said, I'm fine because it doesn't faze me, because when I'm talking to some people, I'm listening to the story. I'm like, man, this guy used to just live up the street from where I live. And it was like, and he's telling me something. And it's like, but some counselors could be terrified of that. And it's like, she knows her stuff, but she doesn't know the environment with which she's going to work to try to do her stuff. So then the outreach program ain't going to work if 3 weeks in she's running to get another job.
Right. Absolutely.
So, I mean, I'm agreeing with her, but we as therapists also need to learn the other part. I guess that working class part of our job. Because otherwise, we're not going to be able to do it. Yeah, if somebody's sticking a gun in my face or threatening, of course I'm going to be scared. But I went up in the house and there were kids running everywhere. I was like, whatever. He was right there. I set him on my lap. I'm like, I got something to do. I just set him lap. I just kept talking and I put him down. You know, I wasn't even thinking, I got a daughter myself. I was thinking, okay, I got to settle this kid down. I just put him on my lap and I just went to work. I was like, whatever.
Amazing.
You take a new person. They're like, I'm not going in that. I'm like, this is what you got to do. I got to get this information from this woman. I don't have time to say, well, let's go somewhere else so your kid can sit somewhere.
Awesome.
I got to do what I got to do on the run and on the fly. And a lot of us don't. I didn't learn that. They threw me in and I was like, oops. But over 20, almost 30 years off and on doing stuff, you kind of figure it out. But that's the kind of training that a lot of these therapists need. Like you're going to set up your program. I don't know how, maybe you could train them. I don't know how that would work. And then I think the programs would be a lot better, because then the counselors would know it's what they learned and then whatever they're going to experience on the job. And I think and then maybe it could work a little bit better. So
thank you, William, for that. We're running a little short on time. So if you're able to join us for a few more minutes, that would be great. If you have to leave, that's also totally okay. I'm just going to ask like 2 more questions and then we can conclude the amazing conversation we're having. So we kind of have talked about like what we can do to prevent all these issues and where they come from. I would like to hear your thoughts on once in jail, once we already have these people in jail. And I will ask your personal experience, SHAWANA and Michael. What was your experience while incarcerated with handling mental health issues? We can begin with you, Michael.
It's just like, and I'm not a defeatist person. I'm very optimistic. But it's like one of those things where, just like a lot of other areas within, the United States, things are inadequate. And it's probably one of the places where you see, like, we already know, like, the mentality of people locked up, you just give them the bare minimum. And then things even fall below that. I mean, think about this. Okay, I got locked up at 19. Through the system, I get convicted and I get 60 years. I get to prison at 22 with 60 years. Never once did a therapist anything come ask me how you dealing with this. That doesn't happen there. It's like in order for you to get mental health treatment within prison, it's like you gotta like be really like somebody that is like, and I know this is gonna sound kind of, but it's just being 100. Somebody that's like smearing feces on themselves in their cells, and then they take you serious. But other than that, it's like most people are not getting what they need. But also, it's connected to, it's like that in the larger society. It's just a continuation of what was going on outside. And then that continuation even drops a few notches under that. So, and when I got a little older, because mind you, by the time I leave, I mean, when I left, I'm 40. So I'm seeing 18, 19, 20-year-olds come through the door, and I'm sitting there and I'm hearing their stories about what their lives look like. And I'm thinking about there is, there is a lot of people that are suffering from PTSD in prison. When you talk about these kids coming out of these hoods and they've been seeing shoot 'em up, bang, bang, and this and that since they were 10, they've been losing friends since they was 14, 15. There's something that that like, but it's something that is not talked about. I don't think people care about it because really the mental health thing within the America period across the board, it's not a huge thing. It's very simple. Only thing that's difficult about it is the people, the powers that be, the government and things like that do not take it serious. Think about what they did. Look when COVID popped off. Look at all the resources that were put forth for COVID. You don't see those type of resources put forth when it comes to something like mental health, when we are talking about human beings, and some of it is trauma inflicted. Some people are born with certain things. There is nothing to catch none of that early or did. It's just like, who cares? But it's like if people took it serious, like, and when I say people, because you do have like individuals that are doing what they can on the individual front, which that's what's up. But once the government takes it serious, because the government is the one that can write $1 trillion check. And until they start taking it serious, I mean, we're going to obviously, because everybody individual is going to do what they can, but it's not this like tricky ass math problem that's on the board. It's pretty simple. That's how I kind of feel.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Shawana, what was your experience while incarcerated with handling mental health? And I guess I can elaborate a little more. If you ever needed to see a therapist because you were having a crisis, were you provided one? Such things like that.
Prison is the crisis. And I believe, I can't speak for a man because I'm not a man. Women's prison is a mental health disaster. You have mothers who cannot find their children. I got there at 17. I was the youngest person in a room full of lifers. And could you imagine, like, I had to be some people's trigger because I'm a child and where are their children?
Mm.
It's an atrocity. And women are creatures who are already suffering. And for women, they're exacerbated by drugs, domestic violence, sexual assault. They're already on the fringe of mental disaster. Prison exacerbates and sends them over the edge. There is no hope. This is exactly why I wrote legislation. I came home from prison and, we talk about post-traumatic stress syndrome. Well, I can't say I have that because I won't get any benefits or any services. That's what I realized as well. Like he said, there's no therapist for me because I can't afford it. When you come home from prison, there's Medicaid and Medicare, right? They only pay for a psychiatrist who can give you drugs. Drugs is not the answer. Now you're perpetuating a new problem. Pfizer and Merck and Big Pharma. Absolutely not. And that's the catch-all. That's the answer for mental health in prison, is to push pharmaceuticals to the needle. I walked in with people who were fluent. I walked out of prison and people could not say their names because they were drugged out. And this is why I am pushing post-traumatic prison disorder, because I'm asking for trauma-informed therapists to evaluate people 14 days within their incarceration. I'm asking that guards and staff be mandated, because they've never been mandated to anything, that they are mandated to mental health therapy and harm reduction, because they create and perpetuate mental illness and harm. They're the whip and the overseer, and most of them look like me. And I'm demanding, we write legislation and we talk about mental health and we talk about programs, right? But whoever oversees them, I'm calling on the state and the assembly to create a committee that oversees it yearly, and people. Because prison, we come out, we go in traumatized, we get more traumatized, we come out traumatized with $40 in a bus ticket, and they say, go live your best life. You set me up from the beginning for failure, and it's impossible. And this is why, as one woman, I'm attempting to do my part, and it's with policy and legislation. Because he said something that was powerful. The government is not giving mental health $1 trillion check, right? We're giving it to infrastructure, the Green New Deal, which is a shit show and a shenanigan. But what I do know is that if you write policy and legislation and you ask them who's going to fund it, it has to be funded. And so, you know what? We got to start using the same tools that are available and trick the government. Because here's the reality. We're exacerbated. Biden just said that mental health is a state of emergency. Guess what? So now it's time to ally up and hold his feet to the fire, if that means we pitching tents in front of D.C. Because I didn't say, we know it's a disaster. We've been in a disaster 500 years. Well, he just declared it was a disaster. So,
Right.
Disaster.
Definitely.
So I would love to go fight with everybody that's on this line right now, because it's going to take everybody.
Well, I think you're getting in a very good path, and again, thank you for that, and I'm sure you're going to make a difference in many people's lives. I'm going to move on to the next question, and we're just running out of time and should end it soon. So once out of jail, how can we reintegrate formerly incarcerated people back into society while supporting mental health? And William, we can begin with you. What do you believe as a therapist would be a good approach?
I think it's the perfect last question, I guess, because of all of the things that they were saying. But like you said, it's not really going to work if you don't have it all, everybody working on the same page. I mean, where I'm working, working in the jail, but I'm not really working in prison. So let me just tell you real quick. They come in, the jail is in the downtown Cleveland, so they can't go outside. The guards are more worried about, when you see him, Mr. Hassan, can I watch you? It's not really, you got one, maybe a few psychiatrists. You got a few psychiatrists. The mental health caseload is much higher. You know, it's all about moving them as fast as you can. No services. Now we're in a jail in the downtown Cleveland. I'm a drug counselor. Somehow people are overdosing on drugs. Who's bringing the drugs in? Got to be the guards. So are they really invested? Imagine you come to jail for drugs. You're using drugs in jail. And in our jail, I don't know how crazy, but the minute you're trying to go, they'll let you go at 4 o'clock in the morning with a pair of shorts and a T-shirt, and that's it. They don't give you no number. Thank God we're there to try to connect people up. But if they're leaving at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know, they're left at 4 o'clock in the morning, I understand it's a safety thing, But I say, okay, I'm gonna come back tomorrow and give you these things. I'm gonna try to hook you up with these services. And I come the next morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. They didn't let him go at 4 o'clock in the morning. It may be snowing outside. He's got nothing. She's got nothing. A bag, because they leave with what they came in. They came in, imagine they come in August, and now it's the middle of January. They open the door. I mean, I've seen not all the time before, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. So you got to start with all the things everybody's saying, but the jails have to be invested in this. I mean, we don't have privacy. I got to stand in the hall talking to somebody so the guard can watch me. People are walking by, hearing everything that we're saying, because the guard needs to watch him or her. I got it. But you could create a room. Our mental health floor is interesting because you have a mental health floor, and then I'm done. But when something has happened, it'll take some of the people off the mental health floor to put them there. So now you take the mental health people who are doing well on the mental health pod, and then you put them in a pod they're not designed to be in, because you need that pod. And so now they're popping off because they were fine in the pod they were in. But they decide they need a pod. So instead of going somewhere else, they take the mental health pod. And they go, no, we need these rooms. Put them somewhere else. Knowing, like, for example, they're in a cell. Then you put them in a dorm where they're not good around a whole bunch of people. But you need that. You're not thinking about mental health. You're just thinking about, well, I got to, and then all of a sudden, he's a behavior problem because he was doing fine when he was where he was at. Y'all had why didn't you put that other guy in the dorm where he's too violent? I got that, but this was specifically for people. Sometimes in the jail, you say they're on the 3rd floor, they can't find them. They're on the 7th floor. So I'm saying that the integration, the jail system, the incarceration system, it should start there when they first come in, a program to sort of go. And like I said, I saw somebody the other day. I think I'm going to be leaving tomorrow. They released a person at like 9 o'clock in the morning. How you going to hook up services the next day for somebody when they release somebody at 9 o'clock at night? And you go to the pod to see him. Oh, she left yesterday. Y'all could have told me that this morning before I walked all the way over here. She's gone. Now, when she gets out, unfortunately, she's not going to run back in. Hey, what about, her mind is like, I'm free because I was in that hell. Because you didn't give me nothing when I was there. You took me off my pod, and now you let me free. I'm going to run as far away from you people as I can. So, yeah, it's got to be all the stuff we've been talking about, but the money throwing it at, I bet you throw $1 trillion at the jail, because they're thinking about building a new jail in Cuyahoga County, but they say the new guy doesn't want the jail, so they're trying to rush it through. Because the new guy comes in, he's going to say no to the jail. Trust me, they ain't going to build no new jail. I just know they're not, because I know this city. But they have an idea. The old guy was really into therapy and integrated care. I bet you they'll stall until the new one comes in who doesn't like it. And we got the same jail that was there since 1993. So
yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Can I say something real fast?
Yeah, of course, Michael. I was gonna ask your input right now.
Because here's when you talking about people going getting incarcerated that have mental health issues, and when they land in that environment, this is how bad it is. Because one of the things that people do not talk a lot about when it comes to the prison experience is solitary confinement, the whole segregation, whatever you want to call it. Now, you will hear about it in some cases where somebody done 17 years there or something like that. But there is like one of the most scariest places that I have ever been in prison is when you go to, like in my case, doing some stuff I wasn't supposed to be doing. I done got rolled up. Now I'm in segregation for it. But what do you find in segregation is a large population of people that have mental health issues. They are people that have mental health issues, went through the system, got locked up under these stressful conditions that being locked up already has. What do they start doing? They start acting out. Now, what happens in prison when you acting out? They not calling a counselor or a therapist. They sending you to the disciplinary hearing board. They gonna write you up and they gonna send you to segregation. And then now the situation has gotten even more stressful because they locked in a cell 23 hours a day with no human contact. Then they start acting out in their cell, and doing all that. And next thing you know, you'll find somebody that been in segregation for 3 years. And when I was there like that, it's like a scary environment because you don't know how people are going to respond because, sometimes people are just not, they're not, they're struggling. And it's
Definitely.
like,
Sorry to interrupt you, Michael.
no,
What would be some of the things that you think would be most helpful when reintegrating people back into society after they've left prison?
I mean,
Or according to your own experience, what do you think helped you the most?
well,
I know everyone's different, but sorry.
I, I mean, I keep my answer simple because it's like, take it serious. If we all know what needs to be done, like, you create programs, you want to catch people, diagnose, do the proper things to help better the situation. Those are the mechanisms that need to be done. People need to take it serious. And, once it's taken serious, everybody kind of know what we need to be doing, but they don't take it serious. I don't care.
Thank you. Shawana, I know that you actually wrote a big section of your bill is actually integrating more mental health care system back in when people have left prison. Can you elaborate a little more on your thoughts about that?
Absolutely. I believe that 60 days before someone exits, there has to be insurance in place, be it whatever it is, so there's no lapse in services. And I also believe that parole and probation has to step up and be a part of people's healing. Absolutely. And so I believe that people leaving prison need individualized service plans that will allow them the method of healing that they need. Because when you go to parole and probation, they send you to drug counseling and AA. This is standard, even if you don't use drugs or alcohol. So I just believe that you need to leave prison with a service plan of therapy, whatever that looks like. You need to leave prison with nobody's probably going to agree that has power, mandatory housing. Because guess what? Someone mentally ill cannot go to a halfway house. It doesn't work. Um, I believe that there have to be mechanisms in place that really are to sustain people's freedom. And that's what we're really not doing at all. And so mental health is already exacerbated. How do we make it easier? We make sure they have insurance. You make sure they have a plan. You make sure that even if they have medication, that they have a 30-day supply of it so they can make it until their next appointments. I'm also calling for marijuana as an alternative to medication in my legislation. Because what I do know is marijuana helps. What I do know is we suffered the most from the war on drugs with marijuana. Now the FBI owns the patent and we've given it to everybody, even people with post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm calling for it for people with post-traumatic prison disorder without being violated by their parole or probation department.
Hmm.
So that's what integrative therapy looks like for me. It looks like everything that we're not using to cope and to make sure people are healed. It's accountability at its finest. And so I'm asking people, please go look up my legislation. Please support it. It's just been revised to add the LGBT community and their own therapies. It just was revised for mothers because that's a different challenge with post-traumatic prison disorder. So I'm really asking. Michigan has it, New York has it, and I'm really asking for support because it takes people to pass legislation.
Amazing.
And when
Thank
people
you
speak.
so much for that. Well, we've kind of reached the end of our conversation. We went really over time, but I'm very grateful that you decided to remain with us. And there were a lot of things that we didn't touch on that I wish we would have gotten to, but I feel like we had an amazing conversation, very informative. We will have an article in which we will link a lot of these the things that were mentioned here, such as Shawana's bill, and other resources that will help in just getting informed and such and such. But thank you again so much for this great conversation. Let's keep bringing awareness to this problem, because I think one of the biggest issues that people don't really know how bad it is, how again multi-layer the problem is. So thank you for your time. You were an amazing guest, and thank you for staying for such a long time. And please keep an eye out for the short video and the story that we're going to be writing. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Okay.
Thank you to all of
Good
the
night.
people that joined us as well. Have a good night.
Miriam and Jenny, they know who they are.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.